information provided by the data set that you'll then represent in the form of a graph or a chart. Some of the charts you might want to create regarding the sales could be looking at the total profits by month or by salesperson. Let's start, for example, looking at the total profits per month of the year. You'll see that we have a column for the date of the order, but there's no column that specifically states the month of the sale. Luckily, there's a function we can write to obtain this information. You're first going to add a new column to the left of the region column. To do so, you're going to right-click on the label for column B and then select Insert Columns. And you'll see a new column has been inserted to the left of the region column. And since this column is going to show the month of the order, we can rename the header as month and press enter. To extract the month name from a date, we can use the text function. In cell B2, you will write equals text to specify that you're using the text function, and then you'll open up the parentheses. You'll first state the date, which is in cell A2. So here you can click on cell A2, and then you will add a comma. Here you'll specify how you want the month to be written. By typing 3 M's within quotations, we'll abbreviate the month with 3 letters. So for January, this would be Jan, and for February, this would be Feb, and so on. If you write 4 M's within quotations, it will return the full name of the month. For this table, let's do the 3 M's to have the abbreviated name for each month. Then you'll close the parentheses and click or press enter. And you'll see that it's copied that formula for the whole column of the table, and we have the month for the order starting with January, followed by February, March, and so on. Great, well now that we have the month for each order, we're going to continue by creating a pivot table that will summarize the information of the table to show what the total income was from the sales for each month. To create the pivot table, you'll first highlight the entire table, and remember that that can be done typing Control A. And then once the whole table has been highlighted, you will go to Insert and then click on Pivot Table. And here it'll tell you to select a table or range, which you have already done. And then it will have you choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed. And here I always recommend to choose a new worksheet so that the pivot table doesn't affect the data that already exists on the current worksheet. And then you'll click OK, and a new worksheet will pop up to the left for the pivot table that we're going to create. To the left of your screen, you'll see the empty pivot table, and to the right, you can see a section called Pivot Table Fields, where you will define what information you would like to plot on the pivot table. To create a pivot table, you'll define the categories as either filters, columns, rows, or values. In the values category, you will only have numbers. So in our case, this could be the total price per column, for example. Then if a category is specified as a column, it will appear in the pivot table as columns of the table, and the same applies to rows. Then for filters, this is less commonly used, but you can have a category appear as a filter with a drop-down menu to select from. It's probably easier to understand with an example. In our case, we want to represent the total profits for each month of the year. So we would have the total price column as a value and the month category as either a row or a column. To later create a graph with this data, it'll be easier if we put the month category as rows. So to create your pivot table, you will drag the total price category to the values section, and then you would drag the month category to rows. And here we've just created our first pivot table, which shows what the total income was per month of this year. Looking at the data from the pivot table, you can see, for example, that June of 2020 the month with the highest earnings from the sales. And now that you have this information, a great way to analyze the trend throughout the year would be to create a chart to represent this information, which you will do in the next task. In this task, you learn how to create a pivot table to summarize and calculate the total profits for each month of the year. In the next task, you will represent this information in a graph, and you'll format the graph.